Hello ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Dan, the voice behind that Kaito Dan, and welcome to my review for RWBY Volume 9 Episode 2, Altercation at the Auspicious Auction. But before we go any further, as always, please make sure you've watched this episode first on Crunchyroll to support the show and the fantastic people behind it. And before we talk about the new episode itself, I want to quickly use this time to discuss some of my thoughts on the new intro, which I haven't been able to do yet outside of my reaction due to a lot of offline issues in terms of timing. I'm gonna have to pass on doing a full video unfortunately because of this, but I didn't want to ignore some of the details that I wanted to share, so if you want to skip to the review, click to this time that's on screen right now. Otherwise, let's quickly burn through 5 points that I have to share. Point 1. I just love how aggressive this intro is in selling the heavy tone this volume will have, from the limited amount of positive expressions, the dark angsty imagery, mostly found in RWBY's shots, and Casey's powerful vocals blaring out talk about losing yourself and the struggle that comes with trying to pull out of this pain. It's as bleak thematically as it is colourful in its creativity, and I am loving it. Point 2. While I don't want to say it's an absolute required reading and you should hopefully still enjoy what's to come without it, I'd still recommend you check out Roman Holiday, as this shot tells me that viewers will likely get a lot more out of Neo's content this volume if you know about her past, and learn more about the kind of person that Neo is behind all the playful sass and urge to kill. Point 3. I adore the visual implications in both of Jean's shots. Penny's blood being the only colour standing out from the rest of Jean's intro is a painful yet excellent way to highlight the weight of this event on the poor lad, much less everyone else feeling that loss. And the clock slacking the late in the day 11th hour is a clever way to symbolise Jean's time being frozen as he takes up the night identity, as well as the motivations for this change most likely coming from wanting to avoid all the pain he feels every single time he is too late to save those he cares about. Point 4. Dear Alex, I definitely want to do a separate video about you, because I have some concerns about your role in this story. And I don't just mean the one that I'm doubtful is as accurate as your true story seems to be saying. And finally, point 5, this has to be the exit out of this world since it mirrors the central location that we fell from and it's in the poster. I just want there to be some doorways that lead to fake exits that try to trick the heroes with realities built on their dreams and hopes. Just saying, imagine the reactions to glimpsing a world with Pyrrha still alive, or a happy patch home with Raven and Summer still around. Oh, and bonus point, this may be the best opening on both a visual and a song level. It's simply phenomenal, and massive props to everyone who helped bring this to life. And now let's quickly breeze through some viewer comments regarding the last episode review, starting with Jacob Pendrahue, who made a cool ironic note about Blake's views on fairy tales, at least in how she's the first to believe the gang is now within one. Then John Matson had a point that I very much agreed with in terms of the positives of Team RWBY's swift reunion. And then finally, I say to you, Freelancer Amber, I'm not sorry. And now we can talk about this latest episode, one I was very eager to get into, as we now truly begin to explore Ever After. The journey is now beginning, and so too does the drama, as we also get ripple effects from the painful truth that dropped onto RWBY's lap. So, as the heroes take their first steps forward, does this altercation have anything worth investing in, or was it a poor experience at the auction? Let's talk about it. We begin by following up on the gang overlooking Ever After, still trying to get by the absurdity that they're now in a fairy tale and let it sink into their heads, via a bit of charming and ironic meta-commentary. Hey, don't you start pointing out the trope skills, that's my job. Not the kind of tone I expected to start with following the sorrowful note closing out the previous chapter, but I can't deny it did get some good laughs out of me, something that became quite the trend this episode, in fact largely thanks to Weiss, who throughout this episode, not just the scene, tries and fails numerous times to make sense in a world full of improbable nonsense, and the result is some top quality reactions and slapstick hilarity. It makes a lot of sense too that it's Weiss who's having the hardest time accepting their current surroundings, given she's the straight-laced one of the group, mostly because of her upbringing. Blake's equally grounded, sure, but her fondness for fiction makes her understanding be obvious. Same with RWBY, who would probably be reacting the same if she wasn't, well, dealing with a lot else on her mind. And Yang's too much of a forward-thinking free spirit to focus on such worries too much, when she can just press on and figure out as she's going along. And on the subject of Weiss's responses, I don't really agree with those who say that she's out of character in this episode, with all the loud and wild expressions. I mean, this is the same girl who did this, and this. She can still be the uptight noble who prefers sense and reason, and be a lively source of comedic energy just as much as anyone. And for as zany as some of her outbursts get, they are still reasonable reactions given the circumstances. Plus, Weiss's expressions, Kara's stellar voice work, and especially the way that Weiss's rants bounce off the rest of the cast, has yet to fail in making me chuckle even after numerous rewatches. Though thankfully it's not all that Weiss has to offer this episode, so it's not overplayed, and Weiss's other stuff is also just as entertaining. But laughs aside, the rest of the girls do make an important realization. The familiar feeling that they have for this place is all because they have read The Girl Who Fell for the World as a kid. As such, they already know about Ever After, as well as Alex, several other characters who we now know their in-show names of, and all the key encounters that Alex faced that led her to a way back home. In no time at all, they've already known how to get back to Remnant, follow Alex's path, which is a little convenient, but still plausible when it's not the first time they've heard the cast retell something from stories that they've read or heard about. I will say though, I was very surprised to see this early understanding, as you'd usually have the heroes need to learn such things as they go along, not before they even take their first steps at exploring, but I do feel this works for the story's benefit. Much like the swift reunion of the girls in the last episode, this means that we can avoid a rather cliche, fish out of water, research our surroundings plot point to allow more time for the stuff that's actually most important in this story, or the character drama and development that, in a truncated volume such as this, needs all the time it can get to cover its contents. And I'd much rather have the gang know enough to get the ball rolling into this juicy content as soon as possible than drag it out just a bit longer for the characters to be caught up to speed. Sure, this does mean that we the viewer don't know what's ahead as well as they do, and they're not going into this world completely blind, but this doesn't mean we're robbed of the surprise factor. We the viewer obviously haven't read the full fable, so we don't know the full extent of what's coming until it happens, and the surprise for the heroes will come in all the ways events deviate from the narrative that they know, especially thanks to their actions, how Jean and Neil's roles affect things, and the way Ever After affects them all personally compared to what trials related more to Alex. So all in all, I'm more than content losing time that could have been wasted on a very common early quest trope if it means that there's more time for the volume's actual narrative goals, when it still maintains a level of awareness to keep both the viewer and the cast vulnerable to unexpected twists and turns, in spite of that familiarity. Thus, we move onward to the location of Jinxy, who has Yang's prosthetic and maybe Crescent Rose, where talk soon then leads to how Alex handled things trying to reclaim her dagger from the peddler, which turns out to be not all that good. In fact, trouble seemed to be a constant with the fallen girl because of her actions, Yang even calling her a bad person that lied and cheated, while Weiss reasoned it was her trying to survive. Focusing on the Alex subject, I love that even without meeting her, we already get some interesting discussion on who she is, or in this case, who she used to be before seemingly abandoning her troublesome traits to become a better person. And the fact that Yang and Weiss aren't in agreement on whether or not her attitude justifies the messes that she caused is a very realistic discussion on how people often will have differing interpretations on the stories they read and their themes. It also sets the marker early on for future discussions within the team whether or not they should trust in following Alex's steps to the letter if it only caused more problems. And it really has me worried about all those RWBY and Alex connections that were made in the intro, because the last thing that RWBY needs right now is being compared to someone who made reckless choices that caused as much harm as it did good. That's the other intriguing element to this discussion, the parallels between what Alex did, acting dishonestly to get what she wanted, which went on to cause conflict regardless of good intentions, and the team's recent actions in Atlas, where they too acted dishonestly at points for a cause that they felt was justified. They aren't that different from the person that they view as bad, but at the moment they don't see that similarity between them, and it leaves the viewer to ponder about it in their stead, which, trust me, there's been plenty in the fandom who have been debating their actions, and I definitely see the case for points raised against them as much as for. But here's the thing though, it's not really about for and against, it's about the lessons held within, and even though Weiss's comments about the morals of Alex's example being so simplistic, it's clear that these four haven't really grasped its lesson yet and how it can relate to them. Instead of learning that you must accept your actions, that they will have consequences, and it's in how you make up for it that ultimately will prove whether or not it was ultimately for the best, Weiss and the others all seem to look at Alex's example and simply focus on the morality side of it all, the black and white mentality to which, in their eyes, Alex did wrong, so she's bad, yet they did things wrong, and yet they're still good people. It's biased and dismissive of that grey area in between, and until all of them learn to accept the consequences of their actions, they can't truly grow from it, nor move on from all the negative feelings tied to it as well. And this makes for some both great building blocks for that later understanding to stem from, and leads to compelling little bits of dialogue like this, which makes the viewer think on things much deeper. Hopefully we get a lot more of this kind of introspective subject matter, as this goes a long way in really making each of these lot grow in great strides when it happens. Also, I gotta point out my love for the artwork when Yang describes how Jinxy nabbed her arm. The style looks like the kind of art you would see in a children's book, with rather cartoony details like the classic dizzy animal gimmick, notably ruby coloured as well, Yang's super expressive look of stunned anger, and Jinxy looking like a shadowy evil monster, which makes for a funny little payoff later on when we see the real deal. But the delights keep coming as Blake chimes in with a few plans of her own, teasing her partner but also casually flirting with these soft hand grazes. First off, you know I love the pun, so it's an instant win. Secondly, I love this interaction. Since they first reunited back at Haven, we've not really had a chance to see these two share some of their softer chemistry together, save for a few moments here or there, as there was some tension at first, and a lot on their plate that took focus away from any real chances for the two to unwind and allow for their growing feelings for each other to reach out in more casual, romantic ways. It's pleasing though to see that Blake is the initiator this time out, with the playful laughs, showing some of Yang's influence on her, and how comfortable Blake has now become around her, which I'm sure is only going to make it all the more emotional then, once their bond is once again put to the grindstone this volume. But for now, it's just rewarding to see them steadily start to act more like a pair who clearly have deep feelings for each other, with these small yet meaningful moments together, before they all need to look to that deep connection to help get them through some tough spells. And it's also nice to see other people share their own joy at the sight as well, with Weiss commenting, "It's about time," clearly knowing for a while now what the Bumblebee pair aren't quite ready to confirm out in the open just yet. Something like this helps a developing romance gain more validity when other people can tell something's blooming and it's not just we the viewer scoping it out. Plus, it coming from a close friend only strengthens that aspect, though it's also a notable point in contrast to RWBY, who's been silent throughout this walk, lost in deep thought when usually she tends to be more involved and active in what's going on around her. Penny's death has made such a huge shift already on the poor girl's attitude, as to be expected. And the fact that she's already like this when this tough journey she's on is only just beginning has me really excited for how much further Ruby's despair will impact her attitude and actions until breaking point. She does try to assure, albeit half-heartedly, that they'll all get home soon, but it lacks that sense of assurance that we've come to expect of Ruby's supportive speeches. Like Ruby herself doesn't even believe her own advice. And when Ruby of all people is feeling that way, you know that's a worrying sign. One effect of Ruby's words that they did have though, is it brings up a rather important topic for Weiss. She doesn't have a home anymore. The Schnee Manor, Atlas and Mantle, heck, even the entire kingdom to some degree, is lost to ruin. And as much as Ruby tries, again half-heartedly, to assure Weiss that she did the best she could, that doesn't ease the pain that Weiss has about losing something so dear to her, nor her frustrations with herself for failing to protect it. Now this is something that I was really hoping to see get brought up, not just because it is a big deal having a main character lose their home like that, but also because of what it represents for Weiss's long-term story. If there's one word to describe what Weiss's character is, it's legacy. The legacy of being an Atlesian, of being a Schnee, being the SDC heiress, and the toxic legacy that her father made, as well as the massive legacy her grandfather was known for that Weiss has wished to live up to. Legacy has defined so much of who Weiss is, and now so much of that legacy is broken, and Weiss feels she's to blame for that as much as her enemies, which is a bitter pill to swallow for someone who has tried so hard to both live up to that legacy and do what she can to make it better. Now the question is, can Weiss even fix herself, much less her home and her legacy? While Weiss's tone is bleak and lines like "despite us" when talking about any good that happened from what they did doesn't bode well for Weiss's confidence right now, we have already seen the potential in her to help make big problems get better, or at least be on the path of repair through the mending that she did within her family. She can do it, she just needs to prove it to herself once more. So I reckon Weiss's time in Ever After will be focused on regaining that self-belief by trying to help her team stay whole, being there for them as they also try to pick up the pieces that they are dealing with. And as someone who has previously loved past moments of Weiss being the team mom, I am super down for an even bigger presence of this across the volume. Sadly though, it doesn't start off on a promising note, as though she tries to help Ruby in confronting the loss of Penny by letting her know that she understands it's not easy for her right now, Ruby's only response is to just start walking again, her expression still deep in hurt, and the rain born from her sadness once again returns. It's so weird to see Ruby so closed off and silent, but it's also super engrossing all the same. Like I said, she didn't even seem to believe the words of comfort that she tried to give to Weiss earlier, and the Ruby that we know who'd always try to lift someone's spirits and showcase herself the ability to hold your head high is now nowhere to be seen, and it's already leading to some really rewarding emotional moments. The writing and performances definitely hit the mark in this scene, though massive props as well to the directing. I love the detail in Weiss grasping Mirtanaster when talking about Atlas, and how often we don't see either girl's faces. Small directed touches like that do a lot for the emotions being laid bare without having to depend on that crutch. And in time, the girls soon reach the world's worst designed bridge, thanks to the world's portion known as Acres, really hammering in the differences between them right now to these connecting elements. Nice bit of world building, safety issues aside. And I wonder now if one of these acre bridges will be the one that we've seen shown in the trailers and the intro. It's here though that we learn Little's never been outside their own acre, nor do they know how to get back. I guess once you're a character in the tale at play in this world, you can only move forward, not backwards. something I think is setting up a detail that I do want to save for that Alex video that I talked about earlier. For now though, we got more chuckles from the girls' reaction to Little's and the just adorable house building dance as well. The show is really doing its best to endear us to Little, which is just raising up so many death flags for me. But for now, Little's officially now invited to join the team proper, and we go into the neighbouring Acres village. It's a toy box town, full of figurine civilians, shops based on games, and tons of posters for an upcoming birthday party for the Red King. The abundance of the birthday posters, by the way, is no doubt setting up the Red King as being a bit of an overbearing, egotistical type, so get ready for that very soon. There's also naturally Jinxy's auction that we have to deal with here, but before we meet them, Blake stresses to avoid making the same mistakes that Alex did, so no lying, no cheating, and much to Yang's chagrin, no hitting. Understandable given the presence of royal toy soldiers, but also the last thing these lot need right now is more problems weighing on them. And it is now time to meet Jinxy the Peddler, who is voiced by Brendan Blaber, who previously voiced Mummy in the My Hero Academia movie Heroes Rising, Manami in Tribe 9, and of course he is also known for his YouTube channel Jello Apocalypse. Yes, the same guy who made the "So basically this is RWBY" video. Oh sure, he makes one video on RWBY and he gets to voice a character. Meanwhile, here I am making RWBY content since Volume 2 and I've had no such luck. Typical. I'm joking, of course I am. But for as cute as the little furball might seem, which Weiss can't help but mock Yang for being swindled by it, Blake chimes in with the surprise that the peddler looks older than she assumed. I guess in the original tale, Jinxy's described as a younger raccoon, or they look so in a picture. But that's definitely going to be a detail worth keeping track of. I'm getting the sense that there is more time-related stuff going on in this world than just what is going on with Jean. We then see his wares for this auction that include a golden staff, a diamond rabbit, and a jade doll. None of which of course are Yang's arm, but this is down to Jinxy being a very sly raccoon, using magic to hide the item's true identity, so the items look more valuable, and thus is worth the price that he asks of you, which is basically whatever Jinxy wants. There's no actual currency here. Now, Blake, being the one most invested in the original tale, suggests that Yang use her heart to figure out which item is her arm. But Yang has no real issue figuring out that it's the staff, since it basically looks like if someone built it out of her prosthetic. And personally, I do kind of wish the scene was done so it wasn't so obvious. Have Yang actually need to follow her heart, so to speak, and find her arm against a tougher to figure out lineup. That way when she figured it out, it would actually make for a nice bit of symbolic focus that Yang has well and truly accepted her prosthetic as part of who she is, after having hesitancy with it in the past. A little something special to what's a brief but rather so-so moment in this sequence. Alas, that wasn't to be. But what is interesting is the jade doll is attracting Ruby's attention, drawing her to it, while Yang asks Blake what was it that Alex had to pay to get her dagger back, which it turns out was both her saddest memory and her happiest. I'm sure we'll learn about those memories exactly down the line. You can't really just drop that notion onto our laps without going into more detail. That is a heavy sounding price. However, the rabbit gets sold for just a simple hug, something that certainly has value, as Little proves in another cute moment. But hey, this is an easy enough price to pay, so maybe Yang will have another easy go as well. Wrong. For starters, the toy soldiers want the staff too for the Red King, and both them and Yang request the staff at the same time, notably just after Jinxy already points to them. A little visual touch I noticed that suggests to me Ever After is already starting to resonate with the girls, acting as if they were its story's protagonist, and playing out its chain of events like Yang's participation was already written, or predetermined, which is really fascinating. So too is the price that Jinxy asks for it, which is knowing what it feels to be loved. Now, to the soldiers, it's a simple price to pay. They're not really in any danger should they give it up, because all they are is just this story's resident lackeys to the king. But to Yang, This is a lot more problematic, and it shows in her reaction. Keep in mind, this isn't Yang having to give up the feeling of love exactly, just knowing how much that feeling is worth. And for much of Yang's life, her actions and identity has been motivated by how much love means to her. Because of the love that she has for her family and friends, the love she obviously has for Blake, and even the love that she's lost with Summer's death and Raven's absence. It's love that fueled her helping to raise Ruby when ties shut down, that pushed her to keep fighting to protect those she cares about, that wounded her when Blake left, and fueled her desire to search for Raven and get some answers from her. By knowing how much love means to Yang, she's lived most of her life trying so hard to keep any love she can safe and strong. So if Yang gave up knowing the worth of these feelings, then so much of her drive in life and motivation to keep her close bonds together will also be gone. And that scares Yang, because then, who is she without that understanding? She'd still have love given to her, but she never truly appreciated without it. She'd never be as happy as that love makes her now, same with the joy that she gets from knowing her love is accepted by others. It's a perfectly fitting price too for the arm, since it was that feeling of love she had for Blake that caused her to lash out at Adam and protect her. Now she's being asked to give up that understanding just to get it back, even if it means losing that warmth, comfort, and inspiration that comes from knowing you are loved and your love is felt in others. This is the kind of material that's made me so excited for this volume. Because only in a setting and premise like this can we start to really test these core aspects of the cast and truly shine a light on what makes them such a vital piece of their puzzle, right down to their strengths and weaknesses. The responses to these tests of character we'll provide should go on to be massively entertaining and thought-provoking, and that's certainly the case here just by seeing Yang look so conflicted. We know Yang won't give up this priceless part of her life when she's fought so hard because of it in the past. And though, spoilers, things work out in her favor this time out, the fact that the love being targeted has already shaken up Yang a little already has me eager to see how she'll manage the more Ever After tries to strike at this personal aspect to her nature even stronger. But now though, Yang's momentarily delayed punching in some heads for her arm when she gets cut off by Ruby suddenly bidding for the Jade doll, despite it not being of any real use for them. Whatever's drawing her to it is enough to turn the attention now to what that price will be to pay for it. And it's an even bigger cost than Yang's. Enough hope to fill the jar that Jinxy's holding. Pfft, no worries, right? Ruby's like 1,000 grams of hope in a bag the size of a tea bag. She can fill up that jar multiple times over with all the hope that she has within, right? Well, not this Ruby. The girl who's had confidence blow after confidence blow, the girl who's questioning her own ability as a leader, as a protector, and the girl who's scarred by a loss of a dear friend that she failed to keep safe. This girl doesn't have hope anymore. Ruby Rose has lost hope, and that's a big, big deal. Not to mention a powerfully tragic moment that hit me right in the gut, knowing full well what this means for those who normally would look to her for that inspiring spark of hope, and knowing as well that things will only get worse before they get better. A literal bit of luck comes Ruby's way though, when Little nabs the puppet doll and gets some payback on the taking something from behind you when you're not looking, Jinxy, when he wasn't doing exactly that. And because of the item being touched before the deal was done, Jinxy's masking spell wears off, causing the staff to turn back to Yang's arm, the rabbit to turn into a kidnapped mouse? Wow, Jinxy, you really are a devious raccoonus. And then we have the Jade doll becoming one of Penny's maiden-made swords. No wonder then Ruby was being drawn to the doll, and there's even a bit of subtle camera work with this jar shot that we see here that also hints to this before the reveal as well. Cause Penny herself was a girl filled with so much hope that Ruby greatly admired in her, and again with her death, there went Ruby's hope. What a brilliantly clever detail that can be so easily missed. And at the same time though, boy boy does it sting a little to see Penny once again being viewed as just a puppet, a tool for someone else's use, even in death. And now I'm sad. There's also a second jaw shot angle that's worth noting about while we're on this subject, as when Jinxy notes that RWBY doesn't have enough hope to fill it, he lowers his arm, and now the jaw looks like it has little in it. I bring this up because of a small theory that myself and some others have started to pick up, that perhaps little is meant to embody RWBY's hope. Think about it. They're young, which could be due to RWBY's own age, or RWBY only just recently losing her hope. They gave RWBY the doll without being asked to do so RWBY's hope can be trying to rebuild itself through aiding RWBY's pain. And then you got all of Little's quirks. Tiredness for RWBY's hope being weaker than usual, a bad guide because right now RWBY's hope is directionless, hungry because it's starving for more hope to make it strong again, and lacking a purpose because right now RWBY is also going through a conflict of identity, so maybe come the end of this journey, Little's purpose will be returning to RWBY's soul as her little spark of hope. It certainly made for a dramatic moment as part of RWBY's perhaps final piece of growth this arc, especially in having to lose Little for RWBY to be whole once more. So let's put a little pin in this idea for now and see what comes of it next that might strengthen the odds of this becoming legit. Gotta say though, I love this moment of the rest of the girls exiting the scene in very traditional ways to them. Yang happily parading her regained arm after some clever sidearm shooting, Blake is just flipping her wig that things have gone so messy, and Weiss is just simply walking away like a mom who can't be bothered anymore reining in her two rambunctious kids. These lot really do have a family dynamic in so many ways, and bonus points as well for Yang having a good little laugh over the madness with some of her classic, poorly timed, groan-worthy punnery. Stuff like this is why she's my personal favourite of the team, not just because of the puns, but because this is just Yang's coping mechanism. She just went through a bit of a scare with what she nearly had to give up now being a massive deal, but now she's in the clear. It's typical Yang fashion for her to try and diffuse the negative vibes with something as simple as a bad, handy joke. It doesn't do Blake any favors though in calming her down. She's not exactly liking the fact that she's now a central figure experiencing the kind of narrative moral adventures that she loved to read. At least it's good that one of them is aware they are being faced with moral dilemmas they're gonna have to deal with the more they're in this place, similar to Alex, right down to making equally bad mistakes and choices. It could also be that Blake is concerned about what morals she herself will face on a personal level, which, my guess, is truly overcoming her fears when reaching out to a world that doesn't fully embrace you, and people who you have hurt in the past, like Yang, Ilya, her parents, and so on. It's making for a good contrast as well to Yang's arc if that is the case. One going through a trial of keeping the feeling of being loved, while the other is dealing with a trial of feeling like they deserve love. But that's just my speculation. RWBY, meanwhile, is now able to ponder why exactly Penny's sword was drawn to her, which only makes her more sad about the loss, as she lets that question stew in her head. The misery's so strong, it's now causing them all to be surrounded in a dark blue shade amidst the incoming rain. Well, that's depressing. And it's here that Weiss has just grown absolutely tired of all the absurdities. All she wants now is just to go home. And while she's still denying the reality of them being in a world of fiction, she does still wish to follow the tale's ending by heading straight for the tree, only to be stuck in a loop. Like RWBY last episode, you can't just go right to the tree, and that point is now hammered into Weiss's head like that rock that she just nailed herself with. Ouch. I'm glad we did address this so soon after hearing that the girls know enough of the story, cause it really nails in the point that just because they are aware of the tale, they can't just skip a few pages, so to speak. They're gonna have to go through this whole adventure just like Alex did, so this is a welcome way to stress that detail in what's also a good bit of slapstick fun. Just seeing Weiss lose her composure so hard is an absolute riot, and my god, the animation on her ranting is flawless. So expressive, and yet still matching the kind of reactions you would expect of a high-class woman like Weiss, with the way her hands, arms, and overall posture give off that same mature, dignified look that we've come to expect of Weiss, but also her hot temper. Genuinely, some of the best character animation we've seen in the series so far, so hats off to those behind the sequence. Anyway, RWBY speaks up again, asking what is next in the tale, her mood lifting just a little bit it seems as the blue shade and rain fade away, and Blake says that the next stop is a meeting with the Red King. So, lucky then for them that the soldiers arrive ready to take them all in as prisoners. Only RWBY has a better solution. They come to the Crimson Castle as birthday party guests, complete with a present for the king: Penny's sword. What follows is straight up one of the most emotional speeches in the series, as RWBY speaks so fondly on the weapon being wielded by who she describes as the most powerful warrior who ever lived. One that was touched by magic, who sacrificed herself to save others, carried a message of hope to the stars, and did all this while seeing the world through better eyes. It's a powerful moment filled with so much love, respect, admiration, and also sadness, with a bit about carrying that message to the stars, obviously referring to Penny lifting up Atlas to allow RWBY's message to the world, just crushing my heart. Penny was more than just RWBY's friend. She was someone who she admired with so much love and respect. She saw in Penny the kind of hopeful, pure, supportive light that she clearly wished to be herself, making this loss hurt all the more because, with her gone, the world just lost someone truly special, a light too bright for a world so dark, which only makes RWBY's descent into hopelessness and misery sting all the more, when even someone as special as Penny was not able to survive. Perhaps in RWBY's head, this is just enough for her to think, yeah, this is thanks to my flawed plans as well, and I'm to blame. I'm the reason why this world just lost something so good. There's a reason why RWBY said that she was the most powerful warrior who ever lived. Because that last part is what truly mattered the most to RWBY. Not that Penny was physically strong or someone with great power she used as best she could to protect others. Penny truly embodied what it meant to be alive by simply being a loving, kind girl who she called her friend. And man, with words like this and a character, like series-defining performance from Lindsay, it's no wonder this moment felt so special. Heck, the speech itself is one thing. What it means right now for RWBY's arc is another. While this was a loving tribute to Penny, it's also a bittersweet eulogy of sorts before she willingly gave up Penny's sword, the last physical memory she has left of her friend, just so she and the others can move forward. And with no guarantee that RWBY will be able to keep the sword afterwards, I fear this was RWBY once more trying to lock away her misery and hurt in order to press on when she's not fully ready to do so yet. The wounds are still open, but she's once again trying to bottle things up that she needs time to process before trekking on into any more trials. The other girls can sense this isn't right either, but RWBY flatly says they don't know what's ahead, yet Alex did, so let's follow this course instead of thinking we know what we're doing. RWBY does not have any faith in herself whatsoever, and that message is as clear as day. RWBY's broken hope is now affecting how she wishes to move forward. She no longer trusts in her own ability to lead her team to a happy outcome. So now even her escape from her sadness is rife with negative emotions too. She has no healthy outlet to free her mind even for a moment. And when you have no means to ease your wounded soul, there's only one way things can go: worse. So, buckle up everyone, for even more entertaining and emotional moments with the Little Red and her fractured hope. I'm fascinated as well by the response from the other girls, because this is something totally new to them, even Yang. They've never really known a RWBY this defeated, this cold. Heck, it's often she's been the one to help get them through such concerning states of mind. Even just by being there, leading the way with that bright hope of hers that things will still get better. And as such, with its absence here, they don't really know what to do. All they can in the moment is just share a look of concern and follow after her. As much of their respective arcs will hopefully lead to rewarding tests of growth for them, they're all now playing a key role in RWBY's arc and showing their own efforts in keeping hope alive by being there for RWBY in her time of need, which should make for some great content, much like the earlier scene with Weiss and RWBY. But that's for next time, as this episode ends with a sneak peek of the Crimson Castle in all its chess-themed glory. And my dear lord, this episode was something else. It's simply incredible how perfectly balanced it was in terms of having a chapter full of deep, captivating emotions, but also a ton of intriguing discussion points and some of the best delivered laughs in some time. I can't believe a chapter that made me laugh as much as this one did was also able to strike such a powerful emotional chord on me multiple points. But hats off to the writing, the direction, and audio work for coming together to create such an instant classic. So much of this episode's strength also comes down as well to how many fantastic moments of strong relationship dynamics there were at their A-game. Each of the girls played off each other to tremendous effect, be it comical or dramatic. The standouts definitely being the respective lead partnerships of RWBY and Weiss and Yang and Blake. Both duos did more than their fair share of carrying both the laughs as much as they carried the heart, and it speaks to the incredible job the RWBY have done in making that strong chemistry between those involved feel so natural, to where even when not in the usual element like with RWBY's attitude, it still remains so appealing to watch them two together. We also got to see each girl's role in this volume provide worthwhile material for the episode to benefit from, whether it was Blake as the insightful guide on the story's events and themes, Yag's energy that kept things flowing with life even as a mask over her deeper conflict, RWBY's continued downward spiral of torment and grief, and man, I could go on for a good while about how Weiss was the absolute MVP this episode. Everything I said about being surprised how well this episode was able to balance so many different tones without losing the entertainment factor, all of that could be echoed through simply Weiss carrying this episode on her back. This is perhaps her strongest episode since I think Volume 5. And the supporting cast was a lot of fun too. Little has truly etched their way into my heart with sweet laughs and some curious layers that are being set up. Meanwhile, Jinxy was a fun early doors roadblock that provided the avenue for some quick emotional conflict, and even the toy soldiers brought out a laugh or two. The visuals were on fire as well, as previously discussed with the excellent character animation and the meaningful camera work, and for what was as brief as our time seems to be in this toy block village, it's another pleasing to the eye backdrop that shows the wealth in this new world in terms of what it can offer for creative, one-of-a-kind set pieces, with perhaps really my only negative on the episode being wanting a little bit more out of that follow your heart moment, which is hardly a blemish on an otherwise flawless chapter. So with that, let's talk episode awards, starting with the scene of the episode. A handful of strong options, but the standout has to be RWBY's penny speech for all the weight and purpose it carries. The obvious pick also wins character of the episode, that being Weiss. I mean, I just said it a moment ago that this was easily her strongest chapter in some time, and a massive showcase of the character's quality, regardless of the tone. And finally, I'm giving the voice acting gold star to Kara Eberly. Lindsay could have just gone back to back in terms of winning this award just for the closing speech alone, much less what they brought throughout the whole episode. But everything I praise about Weiss as the MVP character, so much of that also came thanks to Kara's thoroughly entertaining performance, matching high drama with high comedy. So, while the premiere chapter was a fine enough return to the show, this chapter was a return to the strong form that we hope to see RWBY have moving forward. The caliber of quality can be found throughout the whole thing, and this truly felt like the true tone setup for the adventure to come now that we're fully on board with it. And if future chapters are able to even match the wealth of positives found in just the second portion of its story, then we may truly be in for one heck of a ride. But it's time for you to let me know your thoughts on this episode. Did you enjoy the laughs as much as the feels? Did you equally sing the praises I had, or were you less satisfied in terms of the dynamics between the characters, some of the emotions being shared, and so on? What's your take about Little perhaps being the embodiment of Ruby's hope? And what do you think about our first test of character in this wild world? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe and bell buttons, and tick the notification box to make sure you get every new video from me as they drop. And follow me on Twitter and Tumblr for more on anything to do with RWBY, updates on the channel, and more. But until next time, have a good day or good night, and peace out.